We are going to change our agenda a little just for a few moments because we have a person who came, who lives in the community, who wanted to talk about something not on our agenda. And rather than have him wait to 12 o'clock when we finish all our important work, we felt it was all to do. Oh, you want more? Okay, Ian, please join us.
Well, thank you all for your patience. I understand that this is only tangentially related to your business today, but I wanted to participate and I wanted to not just write an online post, so I've got like 2 minutes here. My name is Ian Horn. I'd like to make a brief statement in support of the women's homeless shelter slated for the former Coughlin school. Is it Coughlin? Coughlin. On West 74th Street. My wife and I purchased an apartment on West 74th Street in fall of 2021, and were joined soon after by a newborn daughter. I believe that our family is deeply affected by the intersection of concerns raised by the Friends of Upper West Side. In opposition to this development, we're affected by education availability, we're affected by safety, we're affected by housing affordability, and we pay a fair share of taxes. Providing shelter and care for people in need is a worthy use of those tax dollars. Furthermore, I've read all I can about this shelter, and I have not found any substance to complaints about shady deals or lack of transparency. Accepting less than perfect solutions is part of living in a community. And this community member wants a homeless shelter with 74. Last winter, a young couple made a cardboard shelter under the local law 11 scaffolding beside our building. It was a warm winter, but they're still spent many nights below zero, not 50 meters from my window. They never hurt anybody. Walking past them nearly every day, I wondered what I would tell my daughter about these people and what lessons she would derive. Will she too be abandoned by our community and left to freeze on the sidewalk one day? I'm ashamed by our collective failure that their homelessness represents. Let's all please do what we can to house the most needy members of our community, including but not limited to women's shelter on West 74th Street. Thanks for your patience.
We thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You're with the right group tonight. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
And in general, we have supported responsibly established shelters, and including on 83rd Street, the Safe Haven shelter, which we mentioned tonight, which had great opposition to the community. Really horrible, with all types of things being said that were unsubstantiated, but they nevertheless were fears. And well, once it opened, that 6 months later, I got some calls. When is it opening?
So impactful. Such a disturbing,
Really disturbing.
really ruining the neighborhood.
So now there are situations where some shelters are not planned well, but part of our job is when we think that's happening, to meet with the Department of Home Services and Department of Social Services and the provider to find out what's going on. And when it actually comes about, we have a position on the community advisory board to try to sustain that via the community.
Yeah, and I said I read all I could to read, but that's okay. There's processes, these are open meetings, so like
Absolutely.
I don't need to read every inch. I just don't think that the shady / non-transparent language was substantiated.
So yes, anybody want to?
I was just going to say that was such a beautifully worded statement. I was wondering if I could get a copy.
I'm happy to send an email to
Yeah, to how should we do it? Community
their CD board
750. Yeah,
email.
right. You could send it to me as the co-chair.
I was
Sheldon. Easy.
Sure.
FINE like everything could be.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say a general. Is there a specific one I should send it to? Address?
You want to send it an email?
I prefer you.
Okay, so it's easy. SFINE.
Yeah.
50. That's my age.
Not in the next video. It's going to take a second here. Pardon me.
So SFINE 50 at AOL.com. I'll make sure it gets into where it should go. And this also has been reported.
Super duper.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
You
I'm
are,
definitionally new here. 2 years into the.
you are owed to us.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, guys. I'm gonna take around for a minute.
Please, please. Okay. Okay, so. Okay, turn and.
Yeah, that's good.
So, not everybody here knows each other, so we'll go around, okay, and then we're going to,
Certainly.
Shelley Fry, co-chair of the committee.
Michael Molinari. Rachel McLaren.
Ken Coughlin.
Saralee.
Okay, so these are all members of the committee, and
Ben Rosenfield, Daring Spirit, but here on Zoom.
so we have a quorum if we need it, okay? And we're very fortunate because we have Cynthia Horning, who's the budget and legislative director for our wonderful council member, Gail Brewer. And we're so glad you're with us tonight. And as you know, we were concerned about what's going on with the budget and what's being budgeted, if you know, because we had certain priorities and we're going to develop priorities. And if we know what's in the hopper, it's going to be much easier to make our decisions. So without further ado, please.
Nice to meet you all. Thanks for having me. So as you probably know, the budget has not been approved yet. So unfortunately, this is a little preliminary, but I can just give you maybe some broad strokes, but no specifics for FY25, which is the budget, which hopefully will be on time. It has been on time for decades, so let's hope that there's no reason to not have it on time, but as you've probably seen in the press, it's a little contentious. So I'll just go through my list based on what Shelley sent about the type of topics that you have. I can answer any questions, and then I also have your priority list from this year as well, that I can respond to some of the other items that may be for this particular committee or just in general, if you would like. So first I can just share that, as you know, we do have confirmed capital projects from participatory budgeting, which ended in April. So the projects that were approved for that for this fiscal year, this coming fiscal year, one was a plaza project that was on 71st Street that we were going to do a study to assess the redesign of the plaza by McDonald's. That actually is going to be postponed for right now. There's a lot more work that just needs to be done with DOT to kind of get that going. In place of that project, the next project that had won, which we're all very excited about, is to provide more lighting for Verdi Square. They had been asking for lighting. They've had a lot of drug use in that park at night and some problems over there, and they feel that lighting would help a great deal with overall security. So we're excited to be able to provide funding for that project. More trees, lots of investments in trees and tree guards. We're also investing in providing tree clinics coming up and this will all come to you guys in memos and other things as well. But the tree clinics will be for constituents who want to learn how to take care of the trees that may be in front of their building and best practices on how to do that. So we're super excited about that. We're going to be working with 5 of the nonprofits to do that work and have clinics all over the district. Water stations in Riverside Park from our district, so like 50s up to 96th Street. These are water stations for bottle filling. The infrastructure on the water fountains have been really deteriorating over the years, as many of you may have experienced yourselves. So this is very exciting, and we're excited about that. I think we're going to try and get one that has like a bowl at the bottom for dogs, and it should be really nice addition to the park. And that's it for PD. So regarding your concerns in general, so if we start with just health, overall, there's been a very big push from the council to have school-based health centers funded in a greater capacity, and also make sure that there are nurses in all the schools. So those are still important efforts that they're doing in on the district level, Councilmember Brewer will continue to support, groups like Ryan Health, Medicare rights. We'll continue to provide breast and other cancer screenings that we do. We just had a really successful, screening with the, American Italian group that does the bus. We just had that at our district office a few weeks ago. And then also especially health concerns for older adults. Right, so we'll continue to make those investments. Regarding mental health, I think the biggest topic right now for our office has been clubhouses. We have a Goddard Tops Clubhouse. The city issued a new RFP for clubhouses, which essentially is going to end up closing the smaller serving clubhouses, which would include clubs.
I know what it is, but wait for everyone what clubhouse is.
A clubhouse is a facility and a program for mental health, for people who really would not have anywhere else to go. They can walk in off the street. They are provided with job training, all sorts of programming. They're life-saving programs, and they built homes and then communities in these clubhouses.
Does your office have a position on closing the smaller?
We're totally against closing any of them whatsoever. The reason that they would be closed, it's really that their contract wouldn't be renewed, which inevitably will end up making them close in many cases. The city has said that they were gonna onboard the people who were losing out on their potential clubhouses to other clubhouses, but they're not necessarily local or close enough. And again, they've built these community families in these clubhouses.
Goddard has one.
Right, Goddard has one. We have one in our district. It's called Tops. And we did rallies, Gail has done multiple letters. We've been fighting very hard to get the funds for that program. We're hopeful that something may happen, but that's something we're working on very hard. Other investments from City Council and from our office would be obviously SPOT, which is a service program for older people, which also provides mental health support, and of course, counseling in schools. All of those issues. Food insecurity, which is your next topic. Obviously, as you probably know, Councilmember Brewer is obsessed with food and food insecurity. We are certainly overall looking at funding pantries and meals. The council is working very hard to try and increase the per meal reimbursement for per meal delivery, which doesn't sound like a lot, but every dollar counts. And a lot of these organizations who are providing meals, door meals, are working at a deficit right now. So they're also then going to try to baseline home delivery, so that will remain in the budget at a certain level, which is what baseline means. For district investments, for continued district investments, we have a beautiful hydroponics farm at the MLK school campus, which has been wonderful, and it feeds not just school, but a huge part of the community. So they take their overgrowth and they give that away to not only students, but also other families in the district. So that's continuing to be a great investment. And then also we have other gardens throughout the district and schools that are doing food growth. And they also have giveaways and small little farm stands to raise money for the schools. And those are all happening, or now that the schools are over, but they have summer programs too. We're starting our Fresh Food for Seniors program with Councilor Brewer, which she started when she was borough president. So we work with Grow NYC, and we purchase food at a special rate. It's $10, and I have flyers that I can leave with you guys to share with everybody. This is a wonderful program. So we then package, it's all volunteer based. We package all of the food. Seniors pay $10 and get like 15 or 20, a huge amount of food for the $10. And that happens.
I do it.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, that's probably where you have seen me before. I do the driving delivery sometimes. So that program is starting as well. It starts, actually, people can make their arrangements now, I think. Yeah. And the first pickup is July 20th. And goes through November, actually, right before Thanksgiving. Other for food, We're also, will continue to support, food programs like at St. Paul and St. Andrew and other faith-based groups that are providing meal distribution and pantry services with fish and all of the rest in the district. Regarding affordable housing, obviously this is met with a million different challenges, right? So, overall, the council has, called upon the mayor to increase capital funding by $3.66 billion. Overall, they're continuing to make big investments in housing preservation and prevention programs. In the district, we do a lot of that work ourselves as well. What we provide legal service programs. We have our monthly housing clinics that will still continue to do. These are all budget issues, right? These are all commitments from our budget. And then also continuing to support programs like home sharing, which is from the New York Foundation for Senior Citizens, but another way to just try and offer and provide housing. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that program. It's actually a pretty old program.
But it's talked about.
Well, it's talked about because they lost funding a couple of years ago, and Gail fought for the funding, and we're continuing to fight for the funding. It's a really unique program in the city. It's a very kind of boutique program, but it connects people with seniors who have room in their homes that want to rent rooms in their homes, and it does a complete screening process, like better than any dating site that you could ever imagine. And they have a huge success rate. But it's a very small program, and does, they like to keep the program, and then if, as the program continues, potentially expand the program, but it's a very labor intensive program. So the ROI is different on this type of program, but it's really valuable, and everyone who's participated has really enjoyed it. I think they said they do like maybe 25 or 30 matches per year, something like that. And they've had really great success. I think in the whole time, they've only had like one or two like issues where they had to make changes, but that was pretty much it. So continuing to look for alternative types of programs. Gail, obviously, also we have bills on this too, which is advocating for the city and nonprofits to buy more SROs. And build more affordable housing as well. In regard to places like Calhoun, and thank you for that beautiful statement. The council member is very supportive, but she also feels very strongly that we need more affordable housing. And when you have a building that is going to be completely redone and invested in that way, she would like to see it as affordable housing. We definitely want to keep shelters in the district and are happy to open new shelters, but if it's a new building that's being reconstructed, her stance is still to really fight for affordable housing for those types of turnovers.
And permanent and 100% affordable.
Right, exactly. So other things regarding housing, Amsterdam Houses actually has, as you may have heard, and Gail's mentioned many times, they have about 40 vacancies. But at the moment, there's no money to repair those vacancies. So that's been also a big challenge. And that's it pretty much. I can break down the $1 billion budget at some point, but we can do that in writing, where I can speak to Roberta about that at a later time to just go over any questions she might have about this as well.
Okay.
I don't know what else you want me to go through, but we have homeless prevention services, investments in Goddard, expansion of fairs, other types of senior programming.
For what? For what specifically? For homeless services?
Yes, well, for everything. I mean, because we invest in them quite deeply, and so does city council.
It was their outreach program.
Yes, and we do have a lot of that. And also for we have other programs too for formerly incarcerated, like young people. We have programs for job development like that through Goddard as well. So we have a ton of investments in Goddard. And so does city council in general. So I have other things to share, but if anyone has any immediate questions, I'll see if I can try to answer them.
Okay, this isn't specifically for a committee, but it does involve the health of the family. So and reading. But, is, reinstating the compost, the funding for the composting program, is that still a priority?
Yes, that is a priority. We actually also have a really good bill that we're fighting for too regarding composting in parks for plant matter. And that bill has been well received. We had a hearing on it recently, but we definitely are still fighting for all of the sanitation money and litter and all of the above, for sure. Yeah,
Because I personally really miss my local.
I know.
Now, these orange things, that say compost, you know, they're not compost. They're going into a biogas facility out in Newtown Creek. Or in Massachusetts, where, and it gets turned into methane. To fuel things, but sometimes the methane gets off the rest of it. It's not true, it's not compost.
Yeah, I can't speak to that specifically. Yeah, I don't have that information. Yeah.
Also, I want to ask, in support of housing, something that the city deals with, or is that just taken?
Is that the state? Oh, no, I think it's both. I think there are investments on both sides.
Did you mention that?
No, I didn't mention support housing.
Is
Yeah,
that something that?
I don't know from the budget perspective, but I know that that's something that we built up. So,
Just gonna ask two questions. First of all,
Take two.
At the beginning of your remarks, you mentioned E70 Coast Plaza and McDonald's, that redesign was being postponed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I missed it, just the reasoning for that. I know that was a community priority in that process.
yes, and it's a priority for the council member too. So she's gonna work on it, and we're gonna hopefully get funding for it for next year.
Do you know what specifically the concerns were?
I don't know the details, but it was regarding Department of Transportation and just taking a step back to discuss it before, because it wasn't, it was presented by the community. So it hadn't really been vetted fully through the Department of Transportation, but it is a huge priority for the council member.
Sure.
And it's not related to any other transportation groups or anything else, because there was a lot of confusion when it first came out that people were concerned about. But it really is a safety program. So, yeah.
And I would also, just, you mentioned, a couple times, sort of the council members' priorities, and certainly appreciate that as well. But I'd also just, ask if it's possible to bring back the voice of the community, understanding her priorities, but also her priorities should also, and I know that they are in consideration. So just making sure that those great remarks were.
No, absolutely. And I'd love a copy of those remarks to share with the council member too. Yeah, that'd be great.
You guys share it?
No, and she's not, I mean, she is all
Oh, yeah,
for
yeah,
shelter,
yeah.
so that's not an issue whatsoever.
Thanks.
It's the type of shelter. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is one shelter that's in progress.
Yes, and if it's gonna be a shelter, it's gonna be, she won't fight it in a shelter, but she would like to have it be affordable, 100% affordable housing, which is not.
Different category of people now.
Actually, would probably help a lot of the same people, right? Because people can't afford to live in New York right now. So it would help a lot of the same people moving from shelter into affordable housing. So it would become a space where if you were in shelter and you could then move out of shelter through either Section 8 or some kind of voucher program, that you would be able to then afford something like that. Yeah. So no, you're not ignorant at all. You said you're new to the city.
No question about it. But, currently, this is what I do in my spare time. Yeah, I don't know what's up there, and we have people who were living just fine in our community and then became homeless through evictions and other situations, but economic. And as a result, if you're homeless long enough, you're likely to have some mental health issues, then all the other things that go on. And so the question is, when do you get people? Okay. Our organization's been able to take people.
You're going to intervene.
But yeah, and those who we were able to get at a point when they're not too far into homelessness, we put into permanent housing. Okay, we have 14 buildings in the neighborhood and what up elsewhere. And those who it's been a long time, we have a transitional shelter. And as soon as they're ready, we move them in, because we have a network. But in general, there are different, even in the women's shelter that's going to be, there's going to be different levels of need. Okay, and different services, level of services, and different people are going to have different amount of time they will need to go into a permanent situation.
I don't believe this too long, but there's no one serving the.
Oh, there's 100%. Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
That's my point.
Oh.
I don't need to belabor it.
And unfortunately, it's increasing and not decreasing.
Sure. And I don't need to.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, there's actually another women's shelter being built down West 59th Street as well.
yeah.
Oh, really?
We're on,
In the site of the, what was Manhattan Cable.
Across from John Jay, right? Yeah,
Okay. And
that's all it is.
yeah, you'll know everything. That's what's going on. Okay, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Can I have a question?
Especially on the-
Can I ask a question?
Right.
It's Roberta.
We can hear you.
she can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. The TOPS program at Goddard, it would be criminal to lose it. It is such a phenomenal program. It's been there for over 35 years I know of, and it should be one of the top priorities for this committee to try and save it.
It's a top
I
priority
know.
for the council.
I know it's one of Gail's top priorities as well, but I think it should be one of ours as well.
Okay, so I'll be in touch with you
Okay,
so we can get,
I'll send you the letters that we've written already,
Excellent.
just so that you have
Perfect.
copies, you can post those, so we'd be happy to
okay,
share.
and we can formulate,
Yeah, it's an RFP issue more than anything, so it's a complicated issue, it's not
right,
a typical, like, them not funding program, it's a little bit different, yeah.
okay,
There are 9 of them that are in potentially to close,
Okay.
yeah.
no, thank you, Roberta, for emphasizing that. Okay, you're welcome to stay online until 12, or if you have something else to do.
I'm all set, unless anyone has any other questions, but you know how to email me, so if
Yes.
anything else comes
Thank
up,
you.
Roberta will make an appointment separately to discuss budget further.
Yeah, we're going to set up a separate meeting with the budget committee.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're also expecting mid-dial from Linda Rosenfield, but we haven't seen him yet, because we want to get a picture of what the state's doing and see how it matches. But this is what I distributed is the 2-pager, okay? I got it down to 2 pages, because it was 4. And what it is, it's the actual requests from West London campaign against hunger, as the writing, as we did other groups. They came through very specifically, so we have actual dollar figures and what they will be for. I want to bring your attention to their last paragraph on the 2nd page, which go that Westside campaign against hunger. Everyone should be aware that they're on 86th Street, and they're on 86th Street and West End Avenue, that's the Church of St. Paul and St. Andrew, and they're also at Lincoln Square Neighborhood Center on 65th Street. They have other things, but that's the ones that serve our community. So WISCA and our partners have engaged in significant public advocacy to restore and increase funding to continue on serving our customers across New York. This is why we are extremely alarmed by the recent announcement by New York City Mayor's Office that funding year 2025 funding for the Community Food Connection CFC program, formerly known as Emergency Food Assistance Program, okay, that was EFAP, okay, would be cut from 57 million to just 25 million. That's a huge number. Okay. A 56% decrease. This program supports nearly 700 community kitchens and food pantries citywide. So in addition to our specific requests that are going to be on the previous page for our community, I think we should emphasize this in our, you know, we're not, you know, we're not an island, okay? And what affects this will affect us in our community as well as everyone. So they were very good. There were a couple other pages, but that was background information, which I'll send you in emails. Now, I sent the committee members our district needs, okay? As I said, it'd be great reading, although somebody could read the whole, okay? But the key is, and maybe we can, Alex, if we could project 11, page 11.
Yeah.
That's information about. I think we've done a really good job in the past in developing our general stuff and then our expense budget priorities. And usually we get 2 or 3 in the top 5. You know, so because it's almost inevitable. How do you argue with food? You know, food insecurity. How do you argue with issues of mental health and so on? So as you see, is that page 11?
Yes.
Okay, so that talks about different concerns we have. We can go on to page 12. Okay, and that should be the, is that the food?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our masterpiece. So that's our big #1 item. Okay, if we could go to 50 to 50. Okay, all right, everyone got the link, right?
Yes.
So it's something you should read over, because we're going to, although we're not meeting during the summer, going to send out different blurbs like this with the information, okay, from as it comes in from different agencies. Because the more specific we are, the more likely we're going to get something what we're asking for. In the more distant past, we'd say, okay, there's food insecurity, you know, X number of percent of the people, we need food, okay? And then we got deep into where the food comes from. We want to be fresh food from New York State. We want them to, we asked the agencies, and of course they wanted to budget it in a way where they could use many different locations across the city in order so that prices would go down and so on and so forth. And donations from places like Hunts Point and other big food markets for its purpose. We're very fortunate that Westside Campaign Against Hunger now coordinates much of what goes on in the city. Okay. At the same time, we said, hold it, what about us? You know, and so we asked them to specifically say what they need for our community. Okay, so when we go to the purpose of the district needs and the budget priorities are, then we send that to the city force. We send it to our elected officials, particularly the city elected officials, as this is what we want you to advocate for. Okay, and it is priority. And again, if we say $100,000 and $100,000 is for A, B, and C, that's much better. And to this agency that does it well, that's much better than saying, you know, send us some money. You know, if you'll see, can you make it bigger? Okay, so which is #1? That's our #1. No, that's not number one. We want one of 25. Yeah. That's the capital. Right? We don't want that.
Yeah, are you looking for the expense?
Yeah. Yeah. There we are. Okay, so you'll notice where it says priority, it's one of 25. At a certain point, probably in September, we'll be having a meeting that will be recommended order of things. It may not be the best way of doing things, but it certainly, if elected see the top 10, we're more likely to focus on that than 25. Okay, so one is provide through, various ways, and the agency responsible, that's the other thing. So how do we get, like here it said during COVID, this and this happened. Well, that's not relevant right now. Okay, we got to get past that. Yeah. Okay, we'll be putting in what happened now and what's needed. There are 3 groups that deal with food. In our system community, that's Worcester, that's Westside Campaign, and Sunbelt Road, and Get Food New York, which serves the whole city, but that's the big source. So that hasn't changed, but we're going to ask for exactly what they asked for, and which agency. Okay.
So as a clarifier on that first one of the last nights, just help school provide free breakfast and lunch only when school is in session. That's not entirely accurate, because they still, over the course of the summer, will serve meals for anyone under age 18.
Well, they do have some food program.
Yeah,
Right.
so,
But that's not through this.
oh,
Not through those sources.
I understand. Okay.
Okay. And that's under the education. So night shift, we've advocated for night shift, but it's not one of our things. It's supposed to be the housing committee. Okay. So that was our number 2. Okay. And it usually is one of the tops. Okay, we have Douglas Housing, which has about 3,500 people. Okay, we had problems during COVID and other situations. We put there in 10025. They say that's a middle class community, and they're doing it by zip code and serving by zip code. So we got around them with COVID. Went to the department.
Thank you.
My organization has a senior center in Douglas. So we went to the city and said we need shots. And so they did it. And then Danny O'Donnell, who's leaving now at night, I went to the state and said this is ridiculous. And so we got that. Before there was when there were school boards, I feel we had this in my advice, we had one community. Because kids went to school in the same community. And I got to know all the night shift leaders because I was the chair of the school. And they all came out, everybody knew each other, and everybody talked to each other. Did away with school boards. There was no forum where people came together, and it was as if the wall was put up between, it was literally put up by Amsterdam houses, by Lincoln Center, and criticizing terribly. Yeah. But a figurative wall with Douglas houses and others, because there was no community group, organizational problem. So we're trying to break that down. Okay, where the community board at one point had no housing committee, and when it did, people didn't want to do a night shift. There were things that were crazy. It's not really housing. Of course, it's housing. But people. We were dealing with these struggles, but not anymore. It's number 2. Let's see if we got a number 3. Okay, and that's a big one for us. That's also Health and Human Services. Okay, That. Here, yeah, the outreach.
Mhm.
In our community. Cottage Riverside does the outreach. And Manhattan Outreach. Now has a few different groups, but when it was first formed. Our board advocated for Cottage Riverside to be in charge, and they worked for a long time, now they're two groups. So Cottage Riverside, goes out onto the street. And it takes a long time to get to know the people who choose to be street homeless. When I say choose to be street homeless, it's an option. Okay, there are places to go. And most of the people do not want to go to the shelters that the city provides. Okay, they'd rather be on the street and sometimes in the subway, especially in the cold weather of the subway. This board advocated when no one would do that for a safe haven. Very important, especially for newer members to know what a safe haven is. We had one in our community up at 100th Street when it was maybe 20, 30 years ago. And when it came out, people went crazy. A shelter, people with mental health problems, people who would be on the street. And after about a month, people said, when did they open? But that's that same thing. It's that same type of thing. And it's been there, and some people in the neighborhood know what it is, but sometimes they have people that will, but what's that? They said, oh, it's some kind of agency. So apparently no one's bothering anybody or making people uncomfortable, but they were. And we have people who are less affluent in the community, people who have more, people who have less, people who are, but there's rarely ever an incident. But when we brought it up for 83rd Street, and what's that?
Almost across from the school.
Right, and the schools were crazy, but the fact was the 5 shelters that we had, homeless shelters in the community, were 4 of them were right opposite schools, and there was never a problem. So when people said, what's going to happen to kids, we're dealing with fear, some legitimate fear. People don't, I'll be on them. And people's concept of what mental illness is, and shelters and homelessness and so on and so forth. But the question was, we want people on the street. We're going to give them an option. I'll give you a personal anecdote, which I think demonstrates why I advocated for the safe haven. There was a guy named Raphael on the street during the pandemic, and walked by him many days. I was looking, small food things around. I asked him, hi, would you like some food? He said, what do you got? I told him some of that. I said, what do you like? But that was after about the 3rd time. He didn't say hello. He didn't have to say hello because I say hello, oh, hi, And these little kiosks where they attach the phones to, and that he sat there during the day. He sat on the inside of a abandoned store where there's like a little inlet, and that's where he slept at night. And it was going on and on and on. Eventually, he got to talking. And when I mentioned the word safe haven, he popped out. I said, you know what a safe haven? He says, you got one? I'll try that. I would try. And what is the difference between a safe haven? Number one, you can come and go if you want, if you wish. There's a bed there. It becomes your bed if you're. There are services that you may need, may not need, but you can choose that you want them. Don't. It's not forced on you. You're in this system that you have to do. The purpose of it is to get permanent housing, and a large percentage is like 95% of the people go in who stay any length of time end up in a permanent situation. There's employment opportunities. So it's that middle ground. It's not a shelter. In fact, I don't even call it a shelter. It's a place to go and to try to get back on your feet at your pace with, nothing forced down your throat, but you have to follow this.
But it's not a congregate shelter, the 200 people.
Right, nothing like that, nothing like that. And it's the other one worked in this one, they said, 6 months later, people didn't know. But I understand, but we made all the accommodations for the schools. All the connections were made that the school administration would be in contact with the people there. There would be outside patrolling by the security. It all ended up pretty much not necessary, but you have to deal with the community as it is. You can't say your fears are unwarranted, therefore we're not going to address them. Until people learn. The best example, I'll give you a homeless shelter. That's a homeless shelter, which is called the transitional shelter, which is not called the shelter, it's called Valley Lodge. Okay, it's been on 108th Street in its old form for 40 years. It was in this old building, it was rehab. It became a national model. Okay, but people didn't know that. At that time, also the school was about to be taken over by the state. That's what we put in Washington. So on the school board, we got special status for that school, and the Delta program was established. Everyone wanted 160 when you get the kids into that program. We did it for a certain percentage of people because they then went to the top and said it's the front center of the neighborhood. Clean it up. And so that was cleaned up. So it was, one thing with the other. Then Phil Reed, may rest in peace, our council person there. He head of Parks Committee, he redid the schoolyard. Nice, turf and facilities. All of a sudden, it was a Robert Moses idea. You just don't do one thing, you do a series of things. So new principal comes to the book of G. And Mark Villa, who was a member of this board, was the Parents Association president. What happens? The principal says, Mark, there's a homeless shelter across the street. Well, what are we going to do about it? He said, Mr. Principal, it's been there before maybe before you became an educator, and we've never had a problem with it. And they never had a problem with us, and what's the problem? But it's a homeless shelter, and so people have ideas. Well, fortunately, Mark was there to give some reasonable response, and they realized it's not a problem. On 108th Street now, there's a unique situation. There's 3 facilities in one. Seniors, senior housing, family housing, and the Valley Lodge shelter. The city said they had to have separate entrances. So 2 measures have been made, but at least the same lobby. People do meet and they do pass it, and they do eat in the same cafeteria and normalizing, and no one has a problem. But we always have to understand, especially in this committee, where people seem to be more generally sympathetic to having people's needs, taken care of as best way possible. That there are people out there who have no concept of how that could possibly be. These are bad people, and dangerous people and so on and so forth. And but unfortunately, they go you or I. That's the way I see it. So we end up with, so we advocated to safe haven, and then Mayor Adams said he's going to do 5 of them. And because we had it at the top of our priority list, right away, it's okay, we'll do it there. Okay. So what we advocate for, sometimes we get because our elected officials are advocating for us. Sometimes the funds come, like for the clubhouse, was one of our one of our priorities. Money comes for budget, then we say, okay, we want it, and we go to Gail and Sean or whoever, there's a. Yeah, if they're not already there, they're up there, let's go get it. So that list is something we should look at. And if there are things on there, if there are 25 that either you think should be high priority, don't seem to be necessary anymore. You think there's something missing? If you think, why do we have that? What do that? That's what we're going to try to do. And we'll try to do it like over the summer. I'm going to send some things out and at your convenience, respond, and we'll start putting things together. And then William and I will send out some, some blurbs best we can. If you want to edit them, nobody's so proud. Okay. Although it's pretty good. Okay.
I would just say, just for a quick moment, one thing for me that I've heard about, like, through different local experience, purely people who have worked in homeless outreach directly or law enforcement, that they've dealt and had to work with these communities. It seems like the big issue is the safety of homeless houseless persons when they try to go into shelters, and that oftentimes they're resistant to do so, whether they're people who are afraid of any sort of like sexual abuse or loss of their property. And so I think as we're continuing to develop any communication that we have with council members and other elected officials, that I would like to see personally, making sure that any opportunity that we have to talk about the safety of individuals, and increasing safety of individuals as they move into as they have the opportunity to move into areas. It seems that's a priority for people in those communities, and so I think that we should advocate on their behalf.
Okay, so what you make very good point. The key is that what we be advocating for are not city shelters. They may be some good, some bad. A lot of people don't want to go there because of safety. But every shelter that we advocate for that comes to us from the Department of Homeless Services, Department of Social Services, they have to have a security plan. And number one, security is for the people who are there. And with the women's shelter, especially because many of the women have been victims of domestic abuse. And because of that, you not only have to be concerned about internal, you have to be concerned about people coming from the outside and what that means to them. And in terms of services, the trauma of that has to be addressed through mental health services and so forth. So what we're dealing, we always question, number one, what is your coverage in terms of security? What is your coverage in terms of social? What service are you providing? What recreational or other services are you providing that people have to live, not just be housed on site or out offsite? How are you relating to what are you expect to relate to the community? There's the thing called the neighbor policy that every shelter has to have, and the community has to know, and there has to be a community advisory board. Right now, on 106th Street, where we had the meeting last month, very unusual things happen. Normally, the community advisory board takes place a month or so after the shelter is open, but the community up on 106th Street, the neighborhood association, and people said they want input now. Okay, it's several months before, and they agreed. The provider agreed.
Wasn't that unusual? It's the same provider that's been on the next block. Everybody
had
kind of knew them, and it was like,
Well, what happened is 107th Street had a women's shelter before. And although the first year, it's going to be community, but we're yelling. For the next 10 years, they were part of the block association. They did things with people developed relationships. They had employment close by many people. It was very successful. And then the city decided to change it. They weren't going for that. That's the whole thing. We went out and demonstrated with the block. The block was demonstrated to keep it shelter. Okay. And eventually, the plan was the same provider, Health USA, will be the provider of the 6th Street. So I suggested to the people from 106th Street to meet with the people from 107th Street, what their experience with the provider was. I said, wow, this is good. But what they got now is something that's unheard of and not a part of the process normally. It's having meetings on an ongoing basis with the provider and the Department of Home Services, and that's appropriate. So that probably would be a very successful shelter. What the people are complaining that there are too many things in that area. Okay, I showed them that they weren't. Okay, there is a migrant shelter, around the corner. But what they were thinking were shelters weren't shelters. People living there for 20 years, you can have permanent housing. It may be low income, and may have social services attached, but the people are not bothering anybody, and it's not a shelter. So if people say there are 5 shelters on our block, and there's only one, and it's not a homeless shelter, it's a migrant shelter, and a transitional. So I understand people feeling overwhelmed, but if you really have a problem, then it should be addressed. But if it's up here, that there are poor people living in there and it must be a shelter, and they've been in your neighborhood for 20 years, find out, or come to the meeting and ask what it is. But again, people, when our organization was doing 108th Street, which was a major project, people got up and said, we have too much affordable today. We have too much affordable in the neighborhood. To me, that was a classic statement, which meant didn't mean much affordable. Affordable, everybody wants affordable. There are too many poor people in our neighborhood. Too many, balance. And I don't know what to tell people.
You didn't have enough affordable parking.
Right. There were
Three parking garages
that was city owned. That shouldn't have been there. That's not what the land use was for. But these things happen, and this committee always has to deal with it. Okay, but and it's important. And if people are, we have their own. First, we meet and talk about our questions when we think there's going to be a real problem, because we may feel that there are problems. Well, the security plan seems terrible. Or I knew people in the Bronx who had a certain group in charge of security. It was terrible. And the social service group was terrible. So I wasn't going to say, well, don't worry, they're good. No, we met with the Department of Homeless Services, and we said, these agencies that you're bringing here didn't work in the Bronx. Why would they work here? The social workers didn't have degrees. That's not everything. They could be good social workers, but you're doing professional social work. Security doesn't seem good enough. What about from this hour to this hour? So we can do some screening, but if you just bring the problems, the situation with all the problems to the community, you see, look what they're doing again. They're trying to dump on our community and another. And the funniest thing, well, it's not funny. When 83rd Street was happening, they pulled someone who's elevated in Philadelphia who used to object to shelters. Neighborhood in the 90s, there was like 3 or 4 shelters. And they called him and said, we need you to come back and help lead us. He said, you didn't care anything about 95th Street and 94th Street. Why should I come to 83rd Street now? And he said, but I spoke to Sheldon. It doesn't seem like it's a bad thing. I said, oh, yeah. But the fact is that some of these situations are not, are not well enough planned. And the communication with the surrounding community is essential, even if they're unreasonable in their thinking. Okay, because there are people who live there, and if you want to build a bridge and make it work, you need.
I think there's a big divide between different members of the community, where I think a lot of people, particularly folks who are living on the streets, particularly if they have a lot of items with them, there's this perception that they're not hygienic, there's safety concerns on the other direction as well, and so I think that's, I don't want to belittle those perspectives either. So I think that's the central challenge.
The one thing I do object to is when people say with people with homeless encampments on the street are violent people. For the most part, they're the most vulnerable people. Okay, and they rarely ever commit any act of violence. So that's one thing that, I said, I'll listen to anything. I listen to hygiene, mental health issues. Well, some people might yell at you, not the way they're dressed or not dressed. Go over that. But we have to get the funds from the Manhattan Outreach to expand. If there's an increase in people on the street, and usually there is in the summer, to work with these people and try to get them services. And since we do have a safe haven, and everyone says it's going to be too crowded, there's plenty of space. There's plenty of space. Okay. And because over time people graduate and they're going permanent housing. And there aren't 108 people at any one time. That's so hopefully somebody will be getting all this stuff around.
Shelley?
Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to flag that Nicholas Guile from Assemblymember Rosenthal's office is on the call.
Okay, I don't see. Oh, there he is. Okay. So our other bookend is the state. Okay. And Nick Guile is the director of legislation. Stuff, right?
Correct.
For member Rosenfield. And we're so glad to hear because funding sources are city and state. And very often we say, oh, we need this. And then we find out that the state has a bill there. So welcome, Nick. And I'm sorry I didn't see you.
No worries.
So,
no problem at all. It's good to see everybody.
Thanks for coming. And whenever you're ready, we have some talk tonight.
Perfect. So yes, I'm Nick Guile, Assemblymember Rosenthal's legislative director. I'm based out of her Albany office, so that's why I'm not able to join you in person tonight. I'm happy to share a little bit about what was in our state budget, which we adopted in mid-April. It funded a bunch of different programs. Some of them are older programs that we fund each year, but then there are also some new additions to this year. So food insecurity, I know, was one of the priorities. And so on that, we were able to provide $5.5 million for the Nutrition Outreach and Education Program. And this is a program that we fund each year that helps provide SNAP outreach and application assistance to low-income people statewide. And so it allows community organizations and others to work with people one-on-one to help them apply for SNAP and other benefits, make sure that they're maximizing the benefits that they do receive. We also provided $145 million for the federal community eligibility provision. And this is a federal program that schools with high poverty rates can use to provide free breakfast and lunch to all students. And it allows the state subsidy that they receive, they would be reimbursed at the free rate. So it's alleviating a bit of a financial burden that many schools face based on how they're reimbursed for the free breakfast and lunch.
And how much?
That was 145 million. Yep. There was also 250,000 for the child and adult care food program, which is an after-school program. It allows after-school programs and childcare centers to provide meals and snacks to children that come to those programs. There was also 57.8 million for hunger prevention and nutrition assistance. Sometimes it's referred to as HIPNAP, and that provides funding to food banks, food pantries, emergency shelters, and other community organizations to procure healthy food, and also helps cover the cost of transportation and distribution to any of their partner organizations. Another big one was Nourish New York, which we provided 54.3 million in the state budget for. And so Nourish New York provides food banks across the state with fresh produce from New York farms. And this is a program that started during the pandemic, and it's seen as really a win-win for farmers in New York State, but also the food banks that they serve, because it allows farmers that have surplus produce that otherwise would go bad and they would be getting rid of, to transfer that to food banks across the state that can distribute it to whoever is in need. And one of the last big hunger pieces in our budget this year was 2 million for the Double Up Food Bucks program. And this is a state program that matches SNAP benefits up to $20 per day for fresh fruits and vegetables at farmers markets and other retailers that participate in the program. And this program has been around since 2014, and so it allows people to double their SNAP benefits for fresh fruits and vegetables. So those were some of the big hunger pieces. I know housing is another priority that you had mentioned and that you discussed earlier, and so the Assembly member is chair of the Assembly Committee on Housing, and so this is one area of the budget that we were really working hard on this year, and we were able to get a few great investments, one of them being the New York Housing for the Future program. So we included 150 million for this program, and some have referred to it as a Mitchell-Lama 2.0 type of program. And it was something that we had created in our Assembly One House budget, and luckily we were able to keep it in the final. And it creates a limited equity cooperative program to provide affordable home ownership and rental opportunities for low and middle income families. And the housing development would take place on state and municipally owned sites, as well as sites that are owned by nonprofits and community land trusts. So that was a big win in this budget. A few capital funding pots that we had was 140 million for NYCHA, capital funding that they can use to make renovations and investments in their buildings. We did the same for Mitchell-Lama. They were provided 80 million for the Mitchell-Lama program. And that's another chunk of capital funding that they can use to help maintain their buildings and make some of the repairs that they need to make. The Assembly member, of course, would like to see bigger investments in both NYCHA and Mitchell-Lama, but I think this is a good start, and we'll be pushing for more in next year's budget, of course. There was also 75 million for public housing outside of New York City in capital funding. And another program that we were really pushing for extra money in this year was HOP, which is the Homeowner Protection Program. We received 40 million for that. And so this is a program that started around the 2008 financial crisis, and it funds a network of about 90 different legal services organizations around the state. They work with homeowners to avoid foreclosure and help them remain in their homes, and it's been incredibly successful. So we're happy to receive 40 million for that. A few years ago, I believe it was at 35, and now they've been bumped up to 40 million. So we'll be pushing for that again next year as well. There was 15 million in the budget for eviction prevention services, legal services. And of course, evictions have increased drastically over the last few years. So having a little bit of extra money to give to legal services organizations to help tenants in need is very important. And that's another program that, of course, we'd like to see much more given to. We also provided 20 million for the neighborhood and rural programs. And these are programs that operate in communities around the state to help tenants navigate housing court. They do eviction prevention work. They also help residents apply for public benefits. They also help with tenant organizing. So there are $20 million allocated in the state budget for those programs that'll be divided up. Settlement houses, there was 4 million in that, and that's a big one for the assembly member. We've been pushing for an increase for quite some time now. And I believe they were stuck at 2.5 million for the last few budget cycles. And so we're happy to get them up to 4 million this year. We'll keep pushing next year for more money as well. But with more asylum seekers coming into New York, it was important that we gave them an increase in this budget. Then I know mental health services was also on the list of important topics. There was a pot of money, about $90 million in opioid settlement funds that New York State has received from different lawsuits that the state has been involved with pharmaceutical companies and opioid manufacturers. And so we are going to be distributing that 90 million. It'll be split up to different local governments. So we have that money coming through. There was 84 million included to increase Medicaid reimbursements for certain treatment sites that provide treatment for mental health conditions. There was also 55 million given to establish 200 new inpatient psychiatric beds at state-operated facilities. And of course, we need many more, but I think this is a good step in the right direction. And of that 55 million, we're also funding 3 new 25-bed transition to home units at state facilities. And so these are facilities that provide specialized care to people that are chronically homeless or have a history of recurring criminal justice involvement, and they're staffed by doctors and nurses, social workers, and others that work with people on their recovery. And so we're happy to be getting a new set of beds there as well. 20 million was given for school-based mental health clinic satellite facilities. So there are about 1,100 of these satellites operating or in development around the state right now. And we've given 20 million to increase that number. Of course, since the pandemic, there's been a great need for more mental health services for young people. And school is where they can access those services most easily. And so this will help more schools open up these satellite facilities. There was also a new program that was funded with $2 million in the state budget for suicide prevention for first responders specifically. Of course, they are people that are on the front lines of major emergencies each day. We know that rates of PTSD are higher with people that work in this field. And so there's 2 million allocated for suicide prevention for that specifically. The last section I wanted to mention was homeless services. So one of the things that we were advocating for in this budget was a cost of living adjustment for workers of different programs run by various state agencies. And there are a few programs already that receive an annual cost of living increase, but there are a handful of agencies that operate programs where the staff do not receive a cost of living increase. And so we were pushing for that. The budget included a 1.5% COLA for these workers. We, of course, would have liked to see that a bit higher, closer to 4%. But we were able to secure 1.5% COLA in this budget. A lot of these programs have had a really difficult time maintaining staff because the staff are able to find other jobs elsewhere that are paying more, where they're getting a cost of living adjustment every year. And these are programs run through Office of Mental Health or Addiction Services and Supports, OPWDD. So we're happy to see that there is a COLA included. There's also 53.6 million for supportive housing needs around the state. This includes funding ESHI, which is a 15-year plan to develop 20,000 units of supported housing statewide. It's currently in year 8 of that program. And of that 53 million, it's also funding services at these supportive housing sites around the state. Anywhere from case management to medication services, counseling, government benefits, legal services, everything in between that they are providing. Another big win that we were pushing was funding for runaway and homeless youth. So they've also been stuck at a lower amount of funding over the years, and our state budget provided 7.8 million. It was a 1.4 million increase from last year. And this is for programs that provide drop-in centers and shelters for runaway and homeless youth. That's something that the assembly member was pushing for. So we're happy to see a 1.4 million increase there. And those are some of the highlights in the issue areas. Of course, there's much more. There's a $237 billion budget. So there's many different programs in there, but those are some of the big highlights.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions? Individual questions? That was a great there. A lot of good stuff. We wanted to, we heard about the city. Very often they're funds in one place and funds in another place, and wondering how they come together. But that's why we're lucky we have elected officials to talk to each other and work together.
Absolutely.
Kevin?
Yeah, that was really an amazing summary.
I'm on a bus.
Okay.
So
Um,
it's hard to speak. I'm on a bus, but I'm listening.
Okay, and then we're gonna.
Deal. What? I wanted to ask, about Medicaid funding for nursing home care. Is there anything in the budget to, this year to prevent, people from being forced to go into nursing home? Avoid institutionalization and be able to get care at home.
Yeah, there were a few different programs that fit into that. I don't have the amounts that we allocated for those in front of me right now, but I can send it over to Shelley tonight and we can get you that information. But there are programs for that I know we did fund through the health budget. Absolutely.
This is something I want Nikki to hear and Gail to hear, because it's not, we have no solution to it. But we understand that anyone that is on MLTC, which is managed long-term care, cannot receive meals delivered to their home from programs such as Meals on Wheels, Dogs Love We Deliver, etc., because they are partially state funded. This seems to be a great injustice and highly problematic for people with food insecurity. We're going to send that information to both of your offices. People that are on MLTC can get assistance for meal preparation from their home health aides, but they do not receive any food. So this is a technical thing, but maybe somehow that can be, looked into and maybe corrected. Because very often certain regulations are passed and they don't match the reality. So we'll be sending it your way.
Sure.
But-
Yeah, we'd be happy to look into it.
Thank you so much for this important information about all the good things. And we know everyone's working for more and more, but there are limits. Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you all.
Okay. And Gail on the bus. How are you?
You're muted.
We can't hear you.
You're muted.
No, we can hear you. Oh, who said?
Yeah.
Oh, Gail, you are muted. I don't know if you're allowed to talk on the bus.
She's not on.
No.
Maybe Alex needs to know.
Just come back.
There she is.
Hi, Gail. Hi again.
So it's still muted.
Now you're on the street, right? So, but you're still muted. Is there a way to unmute? Okay.
Still nothing.
You're muted,
See-
so we see
You can hear me now. Can you hear me now?
you.
I think I can just listen. I have to listen.
Okay, we can hear you now.
All right. I mean, I think the issue that you just raised, I've heard also regarding the meals not being delivered. So we're looking at it also. I don't,
Great.
yep, but thank you. I don't know
Cynthia,
what
would
else. Our budget isn't done yet. We're still negotiating. So I don't really have much to say until it's done.
Cynthia gave us a great overview.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um,
We talked about it earlier, so I'm sure she did.
Thank you. We
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank
seeing you.
Thank you.
Let's hear good news tonight.
Oh,
Okay,
just not ready.
what? As you know.
No.
Or is only good news.
This was with. No one's ready. Did you? Want to call?
Yeah, because.
Yes.
Depends on your district.
Yeah, I thought at least.
Yeah. Well, they have the delegates to the judicial delegates. Okay, so we really got it all together. Okay. If, you know, your input's essential, even if it just, this is really good, you know, or if they're thinking, you say, you know, I was thinking about this and someone mentioned this and we're not considering it.
I think, you know, as just our additional notes from Brian, I think two things that stand out to me. And these are lower priority compared to some of the things I mentioned earlier, but I think, one thing that's fairly prevalent and the area that I live in.
Which is where?
I'm on 7th Coast. Between Central Park West and Columbus.
Speak a little loud, I can hear you,
So between 71st, between Central Park West and Columbus, but we see a lot dog owners who are not curbing their dogs.
Oh.
So I don't know, you know, how this sort of feels to be part of health and all services. So, you know, I don't know different ways that we can work to address that. I think part of it is cultural where people just don't feel the need to. So maybe that's just some signage, some information sharing. That's one thing. The other thing that I would share is, you know, and I think this is prevalent not just throughout the community, but the entire city, is with the alternative side parking. I know it's transportation now, but often the cars will either not move completely, or because of like the parade of cars, the street sweepers never have an opportunity to actually go by and clean the streets in an effective way. And so I think maybe because parking is so, you know, there's probably a multitude of reasons why this happens, but the result is that the streets then remain fairly unsanitary. So I think both those two, sidewalk reflecting the street perspective, are just some things that I've noticed.
Yeah, that latter one would be transportation.
Yeah.
And we did have a resolution from 2 years ago. But it's kind of addressed that because that what it was going to is. But we
It almost seems like in the frequency of the street things happens so often, people feel like they need to, you know, fight for that spot. I wonder if they do it less, you know, and it's smaller areas that people rather than like blanket, like this, you know, this side of the street, the entire community, and then half the time the street never even shows up. It's just it's these 10 blocks, and it's only one day. I mean, well, I will work out the issue, but just
If it's any particular block, I would just register it with our council. You know,
yeah,
because they can complete the sanitation.
Yeah.
About it.
and I've done stuff over my also just about the situation. I think
That's a touchy one.
Yeah.
That was,
I was around.
Yeah, or
Especially when trees. Now they're talking about budgeting, planting around the trees. Well, they have. They planted the little thing.
I'm a dog, owner, but I think you have to be respectful. Say that. I just think, you know, again, these are, I think, lower priority things. Personally,
They're important.
you know, just a little experience.
It's type of thing would be done up at, during the public session at the community board meeting, for, it might bring home, or somebody might say, well, we could do it through that, or you could have things started yet, because the biggest issue, I think, in the history of community, or one of the top 10, was the dog run in the side park. We had hundreds and hundreds of people coming out on both sides. And, you know, it seemed to be 3 months worth of
That's the one that's down, like,
that in the side park.
On 72nd.
oh, that one. Okay. Yeah.
That's like, wow, this is what it's all about. You know.
It got worse. Block dogs.
Well, now it's 12 o'clock. I'm glad you could all come out.
So when you send your misses,
Right,
are they gonna be with regular email or we have to look at?
regular email, and I'm doing that for this reason. Because everyone's doing it. And, some people, you know, and the Google, I've used it, you know, at work, but that's if you, I think it's more useful if you want to, present the topic and then work on that topic.
Right.
You know, one topic, but otherwise, you know, people write about this and then write about that, and that, and it gets more confusing and necessary.
I don't know if I got your last.
No, I don't think I did either.
Yeah.
I send it to the same people.
I wonder how
My last one was mentioned 50 to 58 as
Yes.
expense priorities. That was the after.
Yeah, I don't think
You got the one before that.
no, I don't. Yeah.
I don't think I've been receiving
I definitely put your email there.
I don't, I'm just, yeah.
Yeah. I'll check.
Yeah.
You know, check. Let's do this. Send me an email. Okay. And I'll send you an email that I received it, and then we can get. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Line 50 at AOL.
Yeah, and I put the link to the district needs statement, so you can look at certain things, and then I wrote them small parentheses, that this may be with some reading.
Yes,
It's something to do with handshake,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be yours. He sees that I sent it to you.
I don't.
So.
I got it. Yeah.
Saralee.
I got it. I should be armed.
Armored.
Oh, yeah. One? Turn one.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I can
And
also,
make sure-
if anybody needs it, let me know. I can also send you another link to the board member resource folder that we have, which has all of the information about everyone's contact.
Send it out to.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that after the meeting.
Cool.
Thank you.
And don't hesitate to send, I usually, you know, respond in a timely way unless something that. And, if anybody during summer has nothing else to do and wants to meet and talk about, you know, I'm coming to these meetings, I don't know what they're talking about, or it doesn't have to be in HHS. We had, 2 people who, in the 2 years, the end of 2 years, came on the same time and said, still don't understand that land use stuff, still don't understand the housing stuff, still don't understand the preservation stuff. And it's okay because you're not accustomed to it. And so they look around, they see who do I trust and I'll vote with them, you know? Yeah, and when I was chair of the board, what I did is I did 10-minute sessions at the beginning on the preservation issue that will come up tonight at the meeting, so that people didn't have to sit there saying, what is using those words, what do they mean?
Oh, the acronyms.
Things like that, yeah, the acronyms and the you know, the double hung windows and, you know, and all this stuff that you can learn. I served on preservation for 6 months voluntarily, just to learn the lingo. Because I was lost, I'll say, I can't take it. And they had these long explanations of everything. Now I know less. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Have a
And
good summer.
good summer, yeah.
Yeah.